Hello everyone. Okay, I'm making my response video after I had asked in a previous video about, and I sort of directed the question at North Americans, exactly what freedoms do you possess that you value, that you think are rather unique to American society, that are not really present in any other countries around the world really. So here I am, I'm basically gathering up the responses that I got and I'm going to try to enumerate them. Before I begin, I want to apologize a little bit for how I couched the question in the original video. I think that when I posed the question, my presentation was a little bit biased. It was probably already pretty obvious that in my mind I was beginning to come to the conclusion that this idea of freedom was a little bit of a smokescreen, that the idea that America is more free than Europe is kind of an idea that's been, shall we say, indoctrinated. I don't know if I want to use that word, but I'll use that word, into the American mindset, and it's kind of perhaps not as true as American people think it is. And that may or may not be true, but that wasn't really... I should have been... When you're posing a question like that, you want to be a little bit more neutral. And I think I kind of tinged or flavored the question a little bit too much right off the top with my own bias. And that's not how you really pose an honest question. That's not how you pose a question when you're looking for, unbiased, honest feedback. So, and I got a lot of feedback from both ends. I got some interesting responses from people, so I think I got, a pretty decent number of responses anyhow. But I do want to apologize for, I don't think I was extreme about it, but obviously I had my own bias and my own mind sort of made up already when I posed the question, so I'm sorry for that. I should have posed the question better. That said, I'm going to try to, as much as possible, be a little bit neutral in how I give the answers that I received. I'm not here to fight with anyone, so I'm not here to roll out the answers and say, well, here's why I disagree with you, here's why your answer was wrong. So I'm going to try to just give the answers and then maybe comment on them a little bit briefly, but leave the, leave interpretation of those answers up to you folks. So, yeah, I'm going to try to be fair and unbiased about this. I got several responses, and thank you very much to everyone who responded. Big thank you to the people who did respond. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate your opinions and your feedback. And I don't want to tell people, well, no, you're wrong. And obviously I didn't necessarily agree with everything that was said, but everybody has their own opinion. Everybody has reasons for the opinions that they have, and they are certainly entitled to those opinions, and I'm not here to fight with people or tell them why I disagree with them. So that said, I have my laptop here, which I wrote down a little list of the responses in, so I'm going to start on them. Actually, before I start, I want to say I was a little bit surprised actually by the almost anti-American sentiment that the first few responses had. A couple of people said that the idea of freedom in America is rather meaningless, that it is in fact an idea that's sold to them, usually from an early age. I mean, American children are told that they're free from when they're young, and so it's sort of, again, it's an idea that's indoctrinated into them. And I guess some Americans kind of feel that way. They sort of feel that this idea of freedom is something that is foisted on people to kind of con them or, almost, I don't want to say brainwash, that's really a very negative word, but something like that, sort of almost trick them into thinking that they have something unique and special that nobody else has, through kind of a system of propaganda which includes public schools, as well as how the government explains its approach to things. So I don't want to say whether that's true or not. I think there's a certain truth to that. I think that, yes, to a certain degree, Americans are sold this idea that you have something very special and so you need to fight for that, when in fact they're not necessarily that much more free than other countries. But some people feel very strongly about that. I feel kind of that way. I wouldn't say I feel very, very strongly about it, but I believe that there is at least a kernel of truth to that idea. So one thing that I did bring out in my question video was the problem with journalists being killed here in Russia. And I mentioned that it's pretty rare, it's not really a big problem. But somebody did call me out on it, and actually a couple of people called me out on it and said, look, even if it happens at all, it's a problem. The fact that it happens at all in Russia means that there's not really freedom of the press. And that's a valid point. I mean, I agreed with them, and I kind of went on and said, you're right. I mean, a society isn't really free unless everyone is free. And not many people are journalists. I pointed out that much less than 1% of a society are journalists, and so it's not really a concern for most people. But yes, a society is not truly free unless all of its members are free. And I think I did sort of emphasize that freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of ideas is probably the one freedom that is really important, that we really need to value as a society. So I acknowledge that, and I acknowledged it then and I acknowledge it now. Yes, that is true. It's important for people to be able to say what they think without fear of being censored or killed or something like that for what they say. So yes, I'll agree with that. That is something important, and I think I did bring that up also in the question video, but I'll reiterate it now. Yes, freedom of speech, freedom of the press is important, as well as all the other ideological freedoms like freedom of religion, freedom of association, freedom of movement. That's more of a practical thing, but yeah, that people can move around without being restricted in where they can go, that's also important. So moving on to other things. A couple of people did stress also the right to bear arms, the right to have guns. I'll say that yes, if that's something that's important to you, then yes, the United States is a great country. I don't think there are many countries where there's as much of a social emphasis on not only being able to have guns, but actually indeed owning guns and gun education and how to safely own and operate a gun and things like that. I think that that's a culture that among Western countries is fairly unique to the United States. And I mean, there are other countries where you can have guns, but it's obviously more restricted for the most part. One thing I will add, because people still say that, you know, if there's a need to have a civil uprising against a tyrannical government, then guns are important, which was the original context in which the Second Amendment was written. I want to just qualify that by saying, and you know, again, I'm not trying to fight with people too much, but I want to just point out that's almost meaningless. That idea is almost meaningless in our world today, because government militaries don't just fight with bullet-based weapons. I mean, they have ICBMs, they have nuclear weapons, they have tanks and fighter jets. What is a civil militia with guns going to do against that? Even if they have high-powered rifles, I mean, you could have sniper rifles and assault rifles and things like that. What is a team of civil militia with high-powered assault rifles going to do against an F-18 dropping, you know, a ground attack weaponry on them from 30,000 feet? There's really not much that they're going to be able to do about it. And that didn't exist when we didn't have fighter jets when the Second Amendment was written, and that's why it was relevant back then. It's not really that relevant now. If there was any kind of civil uprising, the government could easily crush it. A single ICBM could blow up an entire town. And you're not going to do anything against an ICBM with a rifle or a shotgun or any other kind of personal firearm. So One person also pointed out, and here is a more kind of ideological question, in a really free society, would people need guns? If you feel the need to have a gun, if you feel threatened or afraid, if you feel that it's important that you have a gun, is that really freedom? Because that's fear. And freedom can also mean freedom from fear, freedom of threats. And people will say, well, in any place where there is a government, any government has the possibility to become tyrannical. And yes, that's true. So make up your own mind. For me personally, I have never owned a gun. I've gone shooting a few times. When I lived in California, a few times I went with my coworkers to a shooting range. We went to Target Masters in Milpitas. Those of you gun enthusiasts in the Bay Area probably know exactly where that is. And yeah, we shot off a few different things. I've shot off 9mm, 45s. I shot a 44 Magnum revolver. That was fun. 12 gauge shotgun, things like that. You know, it's all good fun, and you know, I'm not an anti-gun person. I don't think that guns are horribly evil or that they cause people to kill each other. I just honestly don't really care that much. I don't think that it makes that big a difference whether people have guns or not. But if it's really important to you that you have the right, the constitutional right to own a gun, then yes, the United States is a great country for that.